Thanks so much. Hi, Amanda. Nice to see you. Yeah. Welcome to LA. Amanda just flew in today. We were chatting about how we're having a heat wave here. This must be a bit of a shock to the system after the winter weather that Chicago got last week.
I think it might be about an 80 degree temperature, but I'm loving it.
No thumbs up. We're supposed to be virtually.
Love you, man. Trying to keep up with you. Oh, no.
I love you, man, too.
Okay. This is I guess it's cool.
I think we should just listen a little more. I think we're good. I think we're good. So Amanda, we are here in Super Bowl week, and Wilson is, of course, the official ball of the NFL. And I know you're now, again, the official ball of the NBA as well. But those are some pretty important partnerships to you. Tell me about why they're so important and what you're looking to get out of them.
Yeah, so I mean, if you think about, we sell sporting goods equipment for a living, and there's no better way to build credibility than to be on the fields and the courts with the absolute top athletes in the world. And so we've been with the NFL, we scored every single point ever scored. And now we're back with the NBA. So it's a story, it's a play with the pros play story. And it inspires kids all the way up until the last time you touch a product in your playing career.
And then they all want those footballs and basketballs for Christmas.
Exactly. And so it's not only driving participation, but it's also finding a way, I suppose, to commercialize the fan opportunity. And so we not only show up in the field with the NFL on Super Bowl Sunday, but we have an experience and we have stories that we tell through our product line, whether that's limited edition, collabs, or just kind of the inline assortment. So it's twofold. It's building the authenticity, and then of course it's leveraging that authenticity to drive sales across the business.
You said you've scored every point that's ever been scored in football, which is a pretty amazing to think that. But it's to that point, it's a very, very long-standing partnership. I think when we last chatted, you told me 82 years. How do you keep an 82-year-old partnership fresh?
So luckily, I've only had to do that for 7 of those 82 years. I think in some ways you're anticipating, you're kind of riding along with consumer trends. So that helps drive how you stay fresh, right? So a couple weeks ago, we launched with the NFL and Roblox. So talk about staying fresh. We're in those conversations because our partners bring us and take us there. Similarly, just making sure that in this case of social, when I started 7 years ago, I was actually the only person on the marketing team. And we've since built up social and influencer and app capabilities. And so I think it's making sure that you get those small wins so that you can stay relevant. And we look very different, I'm glad to say, today than we looked, 10 years ago.
Tim talked earlier about Roblox and 9 to 12-year-olds. I have a 10-year-old son. The only time I get him off of Roblox is for soccer or baseball practice. So to that end, obviously I'm here, I represent TeamSnap, which is all about youth sports. And interestingly, we're all talking about the big game, but for millions of kids and their families across the country, every Saturday is Super Bowl Sunday, right? On local soccer fields and at hockey rinks, et cetera. So I'm obviously excited to see that while you have some amazing professional sports partnerships, Wilson also leans in a pretty big way to youth sports. Why is that important to the strategy for the brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing to be on the NFL field or NBA court, but I think it's another to make sure that we're driving that participation. So I think one of the things that I've been most proud of what my team has been able to do and what our business unit has been able to do is really make sure that we're connecting the dots. And so that is fueling participation. That is inspiring girls to play sports that they might not have otherwise thought about playing. And some of that is using the fandom and the kind of aspirational stories from the fields and courts. But more than anything, we're able to take who we are out there and then build grassroots and real big player sort of opportunities. So we have the number 1 selling football and the number 1 selling basketball. So my job is to connect the dots between all these great things that I inherited and make sure that the stories are sharp and kind of come together. So for us, my core target is that 12 to 22-year-old. avid player who's on a roster who loves playing football or basketball. And then we talk fandom on the side.
So it's been an exciting year at Wilson, a couple of big initiatives. One, opening your first retail storefronts ever. Also launching a lifestyle apparel brand. But let's talk about the storefronts first, because that's a big move. Why was that important to the future of Wilson, and how's it going?
Yeah. So in the 7 years that I've been here, I think it's important, I really came into the company when we were in a transition from going from a really great wholesale supplier into trying to make strides in becoming a consumer and a merchant brand. So D2C was important, brand building was important. Like I said, I was the first employee on my marketing team. And it's been about building those capabilities up. So the brand transformation has been in the works for a while. The retail, I think, is an output of what it means to understand that we have to be as relevant off the court and field as on. And so these retail stores allow us the opportunity to talk directly with consumers, show them that there's more equity and heritage to the Wilson brand than just the product itself. So, because in some ways it's pretty hard to sell hard goods all day in a market that is very soft goods driven. So it's important to be able to kind of step outside of that zone and find ways to connect and tell stories that aren't just around the actual football itself.
So part of that transformation and staying relevant is the launch of the new lifestyle apparel line, and really trying to transform into a lifestyle brand, right? Not just hard goods, but a lifestyle brand. So I'd love to just hear more about that effort to make that transformation, while respecting the heritage of a 100-year-old brand.
Yeah, I think particularly in my categories, while I'm very specific to football and basketball, it's incredibly helpful for me to have the lever of lifestyle apparel to pull on for the reasons that I had said earlier. For Wilson as a whole, I think it allows us to step up and extend the reach of who we normally talk to. So I think everybody might know the Wilson brand, but they haven't had a feeling about the brand. I think apparel is a really great way to connect, and you become that badge brand, right? Something that you're proud to wear or to display or to recommend. And so for us, I think apparel is a natural step in saying we've got this equity that we really haven't cashed in on, whether you love tennis or golf or the categories that I manage. And so I get to generate and sort of spin off the success in the categories and then hand that over to a team that really gets to kind of have fun with that out there in the influencer space and really in mass broader events.
So speaking of sort of that lifestyle brand transformation and the influencer space, as part of that, you have been leaning into influencers in a pretty significant way. You have your advisory staff network, and we've talked a lot today about influencer marketing. What have you learned in playing in that space that maybe some of the other marketers in the room could benefit from?
Yeah, I think we were very literal for a very long time. So we work with Russell Wilson as our main brand ambassador on football, but that doesn't mean that off the field there aren't really compelling stories and influencers that we can connect with. And so I think what we've done over the last, let's say, 12 to 18 months is really look for whether it's the micro influencer or the influencer that still captures that youth football mentality or the NFL fan in a way that doesn't have to be in the sidelines, right, or off the sidelines. So I think it's just being a little bit more expansive. And I would say that's in general also just a signal of how we're thinking about our brand very differently than we have in the past.
Yeah, let's dive deeper in that a little. Although, how many in the room want that job of that content creator who gets to go on vacation with Russell Wilson? I want that job. But when we last talked, you talked about some of the people that you're tapping into in that influencer network that might not be as straight on, as you said, as literal as you thought. Tell us a little bit more about some of the cast of characters in that.
Yeah, so I think it's about understanding. So in the case of basketball, which comes to mind, we work with a really great creator named Beja Belize. So we also work with Trae Young in the literal, player sense. But what Beja brings is an energy and a reach that perhaps Trae doesn't. And so where we are as a brand that is typically a leader in all of our sports categories and the equipment side is a brand in search of how do we grow outside of that sort of core business. And those influencers introduce us into kind of very similar to what I heard you guys talking about the NFL, right? Fashion or music. And so that's where the growth is. That's where the stories are. And I'm lucky that I work in two sports categories where those stories matter the most. And I think the influencers that we've chosen to work with allow us to connect entertainment or music. Last year, we did a collaboration with the NFL on the weekend, tied that back to the Super Bowl. So those are things that we never would have done had we not expanded who we talk to and how we talk to them.
Yeah, you talked about the two categories. You focus most on football and basketball, and how expansive they can be. It's also great to see that they're huge participation sports. I'll share, you'll be happy that football was the fastest growing sport on the TeamSnap platform. So for youth participants, and we're in the midst of our biggest basketball season ever. There were 500,000 basketball events in January alone.
Wow. People are ready to get back out.
I think we're all ready to get back out, right? Switching gears a little though, this brand transformation isn't just an external one. You talked about how internally you've had to make some changes to really facilitate it. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing internally to help fuel this change.
Yeah, sure. So I think part of this transformation has been, as you might imagine, and I'm sure many of you have experienced, as you focus more on brand, you have to build out specialized capabilities and expertise. And so we've gone from incredibly siloed business units who very rarely ever spoke to each other and shared ideas to centralizing a marketing platform, bringing in an influencer team, really building up PR as a capability and content. So for somebody like me who felt like, 5 years ago, I barely could get it all done, I love having these experts to lean on because I agree, it is so hard to keep up with social. It's so hard to keep up with who you're, where you need to be and when. And so I think to be able to rely on folks who can do that and help you is important. So I'd say our biggest, I don't want to say growing pain, but transformation internally has come with just making sure we're resourced in a way that doesn't reflect what the legacy side of our business used to look like.
Another investment I know you're making, and we've talked a lot about it today in terms of, I think Tim used the term being a force for good, but also making an investment in community impact initiatives, particularly around accessibility to sport. And I know you recently announced a big partnership with the YMCA, for example. That's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart at TeamSnap, just making sure that more youth can participate in sports. Tell me about kind of why that's important. We chatted a little about why that's so important and what kind of impact you're hoping to make with things like the YMCA partnership.
Sure. I think like a lot of brands, we would admit that back in the summer of 2020, we woke up and realized that we had a lot more work to do in the DE&I space. And so for us, we wanted to make sure that we found a partner that allowed us to take immediate action. But that also felt very genuine and close to our core values as well. And so that whole partnership is really centered around how do we inspire more play? That's the obvious part, right? On the field. But how do we also think about how to inspire off the field sports participation? And what I mean by that is the Y has been an amazing partner. It's not only about youth clinics and showing up on a Saturday morning to help these kids kind of finesse their athletic skill. It's about having career panels and mentoring and showing them that there's some really cool jobs out there that you can go out and get in football, as we've heard, or basketball, just simply by raising your hand and knowing someone. So I think that's the piece that we're most excited about is there's a great flexibility into how our people can participate and really roll up sleeves. But at the same time, we're staying really true to who we are. We want to make sure that we are providing access to play and making sure that sport is kind of the center of some of these kids' lives.
Yeah. All the data shows there's so much benefit to kids participating in sports, right? And to your point about careers, some of the interesting ones I saw recently, 90% of Fortune 500 female executives played sports when they were kids. 6 of our last 11 presidents played college sports. So just the opportunities that unlocks, it's great to see you really leaning in. Super important. I'll throw you a curveball. We saw earlier today, a little bit here, I think we maybe have one more. We saw earlier today, Barbie partnering with Rocket Mortgage, which you wouldn't necessarily think of that partnership. And a lot of brands thinking about collaborating together, aside from the NFL, who's obviously been an amazing partner in the NBA. Is there a brand that it would be super fun for Wilson to collaborate with?
So I actually oversee our collaborations across the company. So there's a long list of brands. I think what we look for in a collaboration partner is somebody that brings a unique access point. And so I feel like we've got a pretty good sports audience with our league partners and just being endemic in the space. We've kind of run through some luxury partnerships already with Louis Vuitton, for example. Wow, this isn't on the spot. I think it might be something for us that really drives us more into that fresh and modern space. So tech, let's say an Apple or a Tesla, we'd love to get our hands, or Porsche. That really shows that we're thinking about innovation and technology and storytelling, because we can tell those same stories too, just through a very different vehicle.
I love that. I think I'm seeing Hook. Amanda, awesome to chat with you. Good luck with everything this week. I know you've got a lot on this week with the Super Bowl, but thanks for sharing your insights with the group.
Thank you.
Just a quick question for you. I know you spoke about.
I know you spoke about how you guys are constantly working to get kids and youth into different types of sports, especially women. You know, I think about that in regards also to culture and getting kids who you're not really seeing skin color within certain sports, nudging them in that way. I mean, I myself am like just now learning how to golf, and I kind of wish I learned at a younger age, but I think when I was younger, I didn't see anybody that really looked like me there, so I tended to go and play other sports. So I'm curious how you guys are kind of working around that angle as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in many cases, you sort of alluded to it. I think it's making sure that we're being fair in how we represent folks in our content. Kids, I should say, I shouldn't call them folks. And I think that is a way, basically positioning it to be aspirational. So I think it's a little bit of content on our social channels. For about 18 months now, we've been trying to turn the spotlight on different heritage months, and particularly focusing on the women's side of sport. Because, you know, and as I sit here as in charge of it, we weren't doing a good job of being equitable there. And so I think it's small steps that you can make, choices that you can make to convert a decision from being about women, instead of just kind of towing the normal line across social, across the influencers, the collabs that you choose to work with. We couldn't have gotten the WNBA at a better time for that reason. There's a ton of momentum there that gives us a great alibi to just keep pushing harder and harder. I think we find the NFL is a great partner on the flag side and on the 7-on-7 side. So there's a really fun, provocative way to tell the story on the football side. And I think it's just about making sure that you're kind of relentless in, at least for the sports that I manage, that I can control, that they get the share of voice. And, you know, when we're visiting YMCAs, it's about making sure that we ask for, how do we bring the girls out? I think that's really important.
And there's one more.
Hi, pleasure meeting you. I'd love to hear your approach. You talk about, you know, targeting especially amateur athletes and collegiate, and I think you have a partnership with the USCAA. How are you approaching NIL and what's happening with all the changes?
Yeah, so, you know, when we talk about influencers, I think for us, we are tiptoeing into the NIL space. We have so much, I suppose you would say, since we do have the NFL and the top leagues, we kind of focus on our storytelling there. We're waiting to see how other brands honestly respond. For a while, it seemed like a lot of people weren't jumping in, and now it seems a lot more accelerated. The, I suppose, easy and cheap answer to that is in fact cheap. We don't really have large budgets on the market side of things, so I have to make choices. And so it's easy for me to say, you know what, NIL isn't the right play right now because I simply don't have the dollars the resources or the team to really attack it in the right way. So while it's something we keep an eye on, I think a lot of things would have to change for me and our team before we really take it on.
Will you join me in thanking Amanda and Nicole?